The polls then showing another win for Scholz, Maria. He already leads in those polls. They widened again over the weekend. To what extent did this debate help to crystallize him as the front runner?
Well, the whole debate was very telling in terms of how much the dynamics in this election have changed. He did win the debate in a poll that was conducted immediately after. He also won the first debate, as you remember, and a lot of this feeds into the idea that this is now for the SPD and Olaf Scholz to lose. Now, what was striking to me during this debate was Armin Laschet, who was much more aggressive than we've seen him before. There were two moments in particular that really caught my eye. One in which he said, if my finance minister behaved the way that you have, it would be problematic for me. He made a very clear reference to the WIRECARD scandal. He also made a very clear reference to the Comex scandal, which has very close ties to Hamburg. And we know that Olaf Scholz, to his own political career, has very close ties with the city. The other issue that Armin Laschet kept on going about is this red scare, this green-green-red coalition that would see Olaf Scholz joining forces with the radical left. Now, until now, none of this has really stuck in polls, and none of this is really resonating in big numbers with the German public. But also in that opinion poll that was conducted after the debate, Armin Laschet did seem to win some ground. His perception when it comes to the public opinion actually increased and added points after the debate. So until now, it has been an Armin Laschet perhaps on the back foot, but the strategy is now changing to becoming much more aggressive in the final 2 weeks of this campaign.
So, Maria, there was, of course, a third person on the stage last night. While the Greens are behind in the polls, are they absolutely needed to form a coalition if Scholz becomes the chancellor?
They're absolutely needed, Francine, in whatever way that government, that future coalition turns to, whether it's led by the SPD or in some ways by the CDU, which is still a possibility. But it's interesting that we have to remind ourselves that Annalena Baerbock was on that stage at times, and even the format, the setting of this debate was quite telling. It was a split screen between Armin Laschet and Olaf Scholz. This is not a three-way race anymore. It really is a duel between the two men. What was also interesting in that debate is that Annalena Baerbock went in hard when it comes to Armin Laschet, especially the climate policy. She was softer on the SPD and Olaf Scholz. Perhaps that tells you which way she intends him leaning after the election, if the results that we have now do crystallize and the SPD wins the election.
What is the one thing, Maria, when you look at, I mean, we talk about German elections quite a lot. And Maria, this will change really the face of how we look also at Germany and the place of Europe and some of the dynamics there with, for example, Europe and China. I mean, is this just Olaf Scholz, the successor or the perceived successor, even if he's not the natural heir to Angela Merkel? I mean, what will he really be different on if he becomes chancellor?
Yeah, Francine, I'm actually very glad that you asked me that question, because it brings another good point in that debate. There was nothing on foreign policy. There were no questions on China. There were no questions on Russia. And there were no questions on the European Union and the future of the euro. So it does show that Germany is still very reluctant to be a global power. And also that when it comes to foreign policy, this is not a big priority yet. It's still very much an election on the domestic front.